the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing, Rob Barrett's my engineer on the other side of the glass. Good? Very good. Thank you so much. I am your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. With great talent comes even greater challenges because as you strive to be the best you can be, you find people along the way who may be better, who may get more breaks. And the question becomes, how do you deal with success and setbacks? Irv Burnett, a Cedar Falls, Iowa middle school phys ed teacher, writes the true story of a man he grew up with, served in the military with, and played football with. And it is one inspiring story. Irv.
It's basically about a young man who played football and his different dreams about going to the next level.
He was one of these guys that had a natural talent and worked hard.
Yeah, he did all of those and then some. Swifty was a cornerback. And in football, at the highest level, college and professional, there are no Caucasian cornerbacks, not even backup, not even on any team, not one. And basically, it's because it's very difficult to try to cover wide receivers. Even the African Americans can't cover wide receivers very well. Basically, a wide receiver is a position where he knows where he's going and what he's going to do. And your job is to try, as a defensive back or cornerback, is to try to keep him from catching passes when no one knows what he's going to do but him. And they're great athletes and usually the fastest people on the whole field. And he was obsessed with being the very, very best at this position. And he ate, drank, and slept football and being a top-rate cornerback. And he was. And this is his story and basically what it took for him to get to that level and how hard he worked and the things he went through to get there. And at the same time, you have to be a person and be in the world dealing with other issues. I mean, just like you ask the question, how did I find time to write? Being a middle school teacher, he found time and blocked out most everything to become a top-rate cornerback.
Did he make it into the NFL?
No, he didn't. And the book stops when he finished his last college game. But there's going to be a sequel, and that goes into whether or not he went pro and all the other issues he had to deal with.
So you're talking about a guy who made it to the upper echelons of collegiate football, and then we're going to find out what happens to him next. But to me, that is just gut-wrenching when you read about the emotional issues that these guys have to deal with and overcome if they want to be successful in life.
That is very true. But, you know, the thing about it is, as a person like that, you have to have a plan B. And I talk to young athletes about this all the time. You can't put all your whole life, your whole dream, everything into one dream. You have to have a plan B. And even sometimes you have to have a plan C. And a lot of them don't. I mean, you know, you can't just say, hey, this is going to be it. This is what I want, and on and on and on. And then when it doesn't happen, what now? This book it not only is a book talking about football, but it talks about life. And I don't care who you are, what sport you're in. No one can go through life just thinking baseball or football, basketball, without having some other things fall on your shoulders, and you have to deal with them.
Do you go out and talk about your book and talk about this guy? And
I was talking to a friend the other day about Swifty and about the book, and she asked if I should go to the local college, I should go to the local football coaches and on and on. I don't want to do that. I have one thought, and that's to try to get this book on screen.
I feel you, Irv, and a lot of people feel the same way you do, but you have to get people to read it if you want to get it up on the big screen. And who better to talk about it than you are? That's all I'm saying. So think on that, all right? Thank you, Irv. J.M. Vrooman wrote in high school, stopped when she went to college, and now she's back at it because writing's her passion. She also wants to be a role model for her kids, so she creates one in her book entitled Legend of Camila. All right, so you talk about elemental tests. What's an elemental test?
Well, there's 5 elemental powers: earth, water, wind, fire, and spirit. And if you are worthy, whether you are honorable, compassionate, ambitious, courageous, or strong, then you will be blessed by one of the elemental spirits. Like when I first started writing this book, I saw that there was a lot of hate and anger and stuff going on in the world. And I had just had my baby, and I just wanted her to have a positive role model in her life. And through this book, I've kind of created this character where she is the Camila, which means she's the perfect being. She is courageous, she's honorable, she's compassionate, she's ambitious, and she's strong. And I just wanted that to be translated into a character and show that, you know, you can, like, even though you make mistakes, you still can be a good person. Jade is the 7th reincarnation of the Camila, and when she gets her elemental powers, then she finds out that she is the Camila, and that Set, the wicked god of the sky, is trying to take over the world and enslave mankind, and she is the person to bring balance and order back into the universe. And it takes place in modern day. She lives in New York, but she has to go through elemental school, which is Phoenix School for Elementals, which is actually located in Chicago. And this is a series, so she not only will be learning her power and getting better at magic and going from protege to advanced to masters, but she also has to deal with everyday stuff like bullying and dealing with social pressures. Also, she has to save the world. So,
Boy, she's got a lot going on, that one.
yeah, she also has to go back into her own memories, because in order to figure out how to defeat Set, the wicked god of the sky, also the elemental demons that he created.
Okay, so we got a series. How many books in the series?
Well, this series is a 7-book series, but there could also be up to 6 prequels if I was that ambitious. We'll see how ambitious I get, but I definitely am doing the full 7-book series. I'm already writing the 2nd book, and that will be out next year.
How are you telling people about this?
Mostly through social media, and I also do conventions. So I love just going to conventions and meeting people. Comic-Con conventions, science fiction conventions, writer conventions, stuff like that. Doing local signings where I go to a place, kind of throw a little party, and everyone just has a good time.
Does that work out for you?
Yeah, whenever I do one, I just kind of do a social media blast, and people just show up, because it's more like a networking thing, but the main focus is my book.
Yeah, and do people you don't even know show up?
Yeah.
Because you're doing it all through social media.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's fine, because I like meeting new people, and the book was meant to inspire people to be better towards each other, not necessarily to be perfect, but to strive for a better soul.
Nice. Very nice message, JM. Very creative, too. Thank you. Kathleen Boaz started writing 10 years ago, and boy, I'll tell you, she's been on fire ever since. Deadly Devotion is her 2nd book with Paige, a book that started as a romance and somehow morphed into a mystery and thriller. Kathleen, tell us more.
I've always had these little weird stories from nowhere. I mean, it's just like it's in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then once I start writing, I mean, it just goes.
Yeah.
And the stories just come to me. Yeah.
This story, it's pretty intense.
Yes. It starts out with a young woman whose sister has leukemia and cannot have a child of her own. And her sister agrees to be a surrogate for her and go forward. But unfortunately, there was an accident where her sister and her brother-in-law died. And she ended up with this, being pregnant, didn't know what to do, and her brother-in-law's family become involved, and they don't even know that Mallory was the one who was pregnant with her sister's child. And they kind of kept it a secret. But once they died, it came out, and then that family decided that they wanted to have, a connection with the child. So it kind of went that way where, they were fighting her. And once they realized that the sister and brother-in-law were actually murdered, then, something was seriously wrong here. And so after that, Mallory finds out she's being stalked by a killer. And the brother who passed away, realizes that Mallory's the one in danger, but nobody knows why exactly until the end. They wanted the child because it was, not really her child. That's why. And then there's attempts made on Mallory's life, and that's when they realized that she had, there was a stalker involved, who is the person who actually murdered the two. And then the story goes on to tell why it happened. And then the funny part in the book is that, they find out that Mallory can only keep the child if she gets married. Otherwise, they were going to have someone else take the child over. They wanted to have a parent, mother and father. And then it just goes through where this person, makes several attempts on Mallory's life. Before they find out, Mallory goes into hiding and is found anyway. So, and then the end of it is that, he does find her. He's not able to kill her because they have other people in place protecting her that she didn't even really know.
A lot of twists and turns in this, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is it a lot of research?
Oh, yeah. Sure. I have bought so many books, trying to get into the mind of somebody who is a serial killer or somebody who is, intense on. I've read a lot, so, true crime stories to find out how, they would act or react in a situation that they're put in.
What do you do in real life?
I worked in accounting. I just retired early because my husband became ill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm retired. I take care of him. I take care of my mom. And then I write.
So writing is probably what helps you keep your sanity then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. I write in the mornings when it's really quiet and, nobody's really up and about doing anything yet. And that's when I do most of my writing. It's kind of an escape, if you want to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I enjoy it. It's not like it's something I have to do.
Right.
Then it also makes it easy for me to lose myself in that story.
Yeah. Are you able to get out?
Well, not as much as I would like to, but I did have a showing of the book this year in New York, and then I'm going to have another one later on. I had a little book showing around where I live here, and it was pretty fun, and we've been setting out lots and lots of flyers to like the bookstores and stuff like that. So yeah.
Any advice for first-time writers?
Don't stop. It's very difficult to get started, and it can be very discouraging, but you just have to keep pushing that envelope, and you need to contact, different publishing houses because, not everyone's going to think your story is great, but, all you need is that one person who believes in you, and you're on your way. But you can't give up. You can't. No, don't even think of the word no, because that's not even in my vocabulary. No is not an option.
No is not an option. Words to live by, Kathleen. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being with us. We've got more coming up on the Page Publishing Book Club, so you should come back right after this.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We are back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I am your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Richard Stewart Lippard has been writing professional manuals on psychiatry and psychiatric social work for years. It was time for him to write a book based on notes that he took while he was a Marine Corps chaplain. He was known as Padre, Sky Pilot, or by a radio call sign, 1-9er, and that's the title of his book. So when you're called on the radio in the military, you have a number. Is that it?
You don't give first names out or say the colonel. You give them a designated number. And mine was 1-9er. The doctor's 1-4. The commanding officer's 6, and the executive officer's 5, and so forth and so on.
You basically helped soldiers who were wounded or dying?
Yes, that's right. I was a first responder. That's along with the corpsman. It changes your mind, how you think about things, and how you respond to certain kinds of stimuli, such as noise and dreams and all that kind of stuff. You know, I still have bad dreams after 50 years. The first chapter just absolutely exhausted because I was starting at the last part. I got 2 days left in country, and I had this kind of flashback. It goes back to my days when I was got my first parish in New Orleans. I was there for 3 years, and then I got called to active duty because I was in the Naval Reserve. I was called to active duty when I was in New Orleans, where I started a brand new mission church. And they called me to active duty, and I went to Camp Pendleton, went over to Vietnam within a couple of weeks. I was assigned to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, and the Catholic chaplain with 2-5 was critically injured. He hit the booby trap. And so they sent me out there, and that's what I spent my whole time with out in the bush. We call it going out in the bush. It was with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division. And so I spent that whole about 10 months, in this constant daily deluge of artillery and explosions and rifle fire and all kinds of stuff daily. It's just at the end of the 10th offensive of 1968, thinly veiled autobiography. What you go through daily as a combat, you know, whether you're in combat, it may not be I didn't carry a weapon. I had an assistant that was never any further than 3 feet from me. And he was my bodyguard, he was my gopher and everything else. He was a Lance Corporal, Bob Marsh. And he goes through our trial and tribulation every single day that we go have to face combat, or face illness or sickness in ourselves. I had fell sick from malaria really bad. I almost died up in the hill, and I almost died in the hospital. I had temperature 105. They couldn't get rid of it, and they finally got rid of the temperature, and I finally made it through. But there's 2 of them that died that were with Echo Company that took us out of Echo Company, went up in the mountains and brought us back down to the battalion. And they put us through the rigors and stuff. There's a chapter in there on what it's like being in the Marine Corps, or being in a situation where you're being treated for malaria, because this is a killer kind. This isn't the Vivax kind of World War II, but it's falciparum, which is a very deadly blood disease that you get. And I almost died. My best friend, who was a Benedictine monk, came up to me when I had my temperature the highest. It was about 104, 105. I was hallucinating and everything. He comes up and gets in my face, thought, "Listen, this is your last chance. Convert." Can you believe he did that to me?
No.
He's just kidding me. He's my best friend. But I just laugh at it now because it's funny.
This book, you talk about how it changes you and you come home a completely different person.
Well, I didn't know it, though. I didn't know it. You don't feel anything about this horrible stuff about this. We learned to cut it off. And so when we come home, we're kind of like being stoned. You're just kind of floating around. That's what you're doing. You're floating around because you don't know how to deal with these feelings that come up. You push them down. Then you have these horrible nightmares. Somebody's going to kill me and throw a satchel. And so I had these horrible nightmares. That's the only thing that told me that something was wrong with me. But I just went about my business. After 2 years, I just dropped out of the ministry. I dropped out, started smoking marijuana. Did the normal things that a dropout does. And it just didn't work, just hung out for a while. And then I went back to graduate school and got another degree. And here I am. The message is, treat these people that come, whether they're civilians or military, treat them with respect. There are ways to deal with this. And dealing with it, you'll get rid of it.
All right, Richard, you're sure an example of that. Thank you. John Blackwell wrote lyrics and poetry for years, but it was during a snowmageddon about 10 years ago that he was inspired to write his first book entitled Smokey Jack and the Colonel, based mostly on the comic book and sci-fi adventures he had with his brother. John.
It's about a dog and his man instead of about a man and his dog. And basically it's about a dog who gets adopted by an elderly couple, and the dog is Smokey Jack. And the elderly couple, one of the people is the Colonel. The Colonel is a recently retired Army Colonel. He hasn't had a dog in a while. He wants a dog when he was retired. And he needs a Jack Russell because he has some interesting family history going back to where he's responsible for his territory, and part of being responsible for his territory has left him in charge of guarding this alien object under the street that has kind of taken his mind a little bit. In particular, he knows he needs to guard it from a fox, so that's why he wants a Jack Russell.
So he needs to protect and guard this thing.
Yes, he needs to keep what's inside it from getting out.
Oh. If it gets out, what happens?
Supernatural shenanigans of the not so great variety. Things change for Smokey and the Colonel when they meet two girls who live down the street from them. One night while they're taking their nightly walk with the Colonel's wife, Smokey's mama, they meet these two girls, Jasmine and Lily. Lily is the older sister. Jasmine's the younger sister. Jasmine's about 9. Lily's 17. And Jasmine is currently in her sister's care because their mother has gone into rehab. Yeah, she has a drinking problem. Someone breaks into their house. When they get home, they leave the house, obviously, to go and call the police and go to a neighbor's house. And while they're walking away from their house, they run into Smokey and Mama and the Colonel. And for Jasmine and Smokey, it's kind of love at first sight. Jasmine's Smokey's favorite thing, absolutely, from pretty much the moment that they meet. And same thing for Jasmine.
Okay.
But Smokey wants to impress Jasmine, so he slips his leash and, gets away from everybody, to try to, show off and be like, ha, 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 I'm so great. And just as he does this, a big storm starts. And he gets scared and spooked in the storm. And he ends up falling into a creek that runs around the property line of the back of their houses. And Jasmine, being a little kid and not really thinking about the consequences, goes into the creek after him during a flash flood. And Lily, of course, jumps in after her sister. They get washed under the street, and that's where the object that the Colonel wants to protect is. So, of course, the first thing they do when they find it is break it open because they get into a fight with a fox.
Oh, no, they break it open? Oh, my goodness.
Basically, the three of them get superpowers. And the first I can really remember of the story ever taking place in my mind is I had a babysitter back when I was maybe 7 or 8, and she was pretty cool. She'd let me bring over my action figures and stuff like that. And at her house, I remember in particular, I always ended up playing werewolf stories because I had Chewbacca and I wanted to use him as a werewolf. And so that's where I can first remember, like, any little bit of the idea coming about. I guess I always kind of wanted to do a bit of a werewolf story.
Well, who better to play a werewolf than Chewbacca? All right, this is the first in a series, so maybe we'll talk again. Thanks, John. Finally, Jay Michaels has written poetry, comedy, and plays, and he was inspired about 20 years ago to write his first book entitled There Go I. He's been dealing with bipolar disorder throughout the years, but somehow in 2015, he gathered his notes and his strength. And tell us what finally got you on track.
Yeah. Actually, I took a workshop called Year to Live, where you plan what you would do if this was the year you died. And I was thinking I should actually finish this book instead of just pretending.
Well, wait a minute. Your blurb says, after a failed suicide attempt, a former healthcare worker finds his way to a job as an assistant to the world's first time traveler.
Yes. Actually, I was hospitalized twice with bipolar. I kind of was starting out with similar circumstances to mine that my character experienced, but instead of ending up in California with a job and a career, the character tries a suicide.
Okay. So you're saying that in real life things worked out for you, right?
Fairly, yes. I kind of talked a little bit about the character's opinions about time travel before he knew that it existed. Then he comes in contact while in the hospital with an old girlfriend whose father is there with her, and he happens to be researching a time travel device, and so he becomes the assistant to that time traveler and ends up traveling in time. But he's not the only one to travel through time. I am a huge Star Trek fan, and my favorite episodes are ones where there's time travel involved. My favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut, and he has a lot of time travel in his most famous book, Slaughterhouse-Five, but it's told through the eyes of Billy Pilgrim, who randomly travels through time within his own life. And a lot of them are apocalyptic. And I really enjoy and admire his style and the way he has kind of a science fiction veneer to a book that's really about social and religious commentary.
So is this kind of like that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of religious and maybe a little political, but not really. So it's very heavily influenced by religion, even though the character is actually an atheist.
Oh, okay. Interesting stuff. Thank you, Jay Michaels. You know, this show is full of interesting stuff. Interesting people, interesting stories, interesting adventures. Am I right? Of course I am. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. You can. We love it, but you don't have to. You can always go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast so you can listen anytime you want. We bring you a new group of authors every single week. And you know what? You could be one of them. One day you could. Just saying. Till next time, I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Get writing.